Okay, good afternoon. We'll get going in just a minute. We'll talk primarily about the Brantford election today. I'm getting a bunch of the Democratic mailers coming in. I don't. The politically, usually the last week, even if you're going to go negative, and the Democrats have certainly gone extremely, extremely negative. Usually the last week is the positive mailer, like, hey, let's all come together kind of shit. But it's likely a sign that they're behind. They know from polling that they're behind, but what Tom Brockett and Ray Dunbar have done, there's no words for how this isn't Brantford. I started in 2009. I worked on the DeRoss campaign in 2009. So 2009, 11, 13, 15, 17, 19, 21, 7 races. And this is by far the most disgusting race I've ever covered from a Brantford standpoint. It's not what Brantford is. The things are so egregiously false that they're easily disprovable as false. It's not like, oh my God, there weren't enough meetings for a new senior center, that this lawsuit shouldn't have been filed, or there's difference of opinion. These are such blatant false statements. And against a guy who has never, in 5 campaigns, sent a negative mailer. So residents say, I want a clean campaign. I want to talk about real issues. I don't want it to be negative. I don't want the nastiness. I'm tired of the nastiness. You finally get a candidate who says, okay, I'm not going to send negative mailers. I'm not going to attack my opponent. I'm just going to run on issues. But then he has to deal with the constant stream of negative mailers and lies about him. And all the guy's done is get project after project done. All he's done is get claims from Republicans he's too Democratic. And now he has to deal with what has become basically New Haven politics in Brantford and the Democratic Party. It was a dumb decision by Democrats to allow this young man, Kevin Coughlin, who's been in town for 2 years, a professional political operative who works for the state, to become the head of their party. But you're seeing why. I got questions today, and I've been getting questions for the last 2 weeks, is why is nobody covering the tax collector issue? Roberta Gilbrooks has an independent audit and a letter from the state OPM, by the way, run by Democrats, that says you got serious issues here. Serious allegations, serious wrongdoing. The employees in the department know it's serious. Why is nobody covering this? Here's why nobody's covering this. Kevin Coughlin is the head of communications for the Senate Democrats. He has relationships with Hearst Media and Patch and all the Current and Connecticut Mirror, and they all work together. So if you're the editor at Hearst and you count on that guy for information, are you going to put out an article when he's running a campaign critical of him or his candidate? No. You had no problem putting out a hit piece for him on Cosgrove that was ridiculous, nonsensical. Not a single thing is against the charter. There's no wrongdoing at all. You had no problem putting out a hit piece, which then became miraculously their mailer. That's the problem with bringing state operatives to run your campaign. We no longer have a Brantford campaign. There are unions pouring money into Tom Brockett, not because they give a damn about Tom Brockett. Brockett's a nobody. They want the connection with the state. Kevin Coughlin is a political operative for the Senate Democrats. He's trying to work his way up. They want somebody at the state level. So they give money to that campaign. Nobody's stupid. If you're a union member who knows what's going on in town, you're voting Cosgrove. Why? Because Cosgrove signed a union agreement on the Walsh Project. Hundreds of thousands of hours went to union workers because of Jamie Cosgrove. They're giving money to Brockett. They don't give a shit about Brockett. They want to get in with Kevin Coughlin. They want in with the state operative. When those negotiations come up, they want to make sure they have somebody there. Hearst is in with Kevin Coughlin. That's what this kid is doing. This kid has changed everything about Branford politics. It was about, we had Jack Ahern against Jamie Cosgrove 4 years ago, and you had actual Branford issues being discussed. And now you have this. And it's just lie after lie after lie, because the only thing this kid cares about is going to work the next day saying, I knocked out Jamie Cosgrove. You're a Democratic operative. You're getting ahead. You're going to push your career ahead. It's sad because I'm a Democrat. And I'm going to say this. I'm an Obama Democrat. The intelligent guy who can communicate, who can answer questions, articulate why he was for or against something. He could make a real argument on issues. I'm actually, I would say, more of a Lamont Democrat. That's social liberal, fiscally type, more conservative. Let's not blow money. Let's not be crazy. Let's just handle issues the right way, in a business-like way, get stuff done for our residents. And then you have this. The Kevin Coughlin, young, overly idealistic, morally righteous, everything I do is right because I believe in my cause nonsense. And their only cause is getting somebody with a D in office. That's the only cause. 8 years ago, Cosgrove ran for office. By the way, he shut his business down to run for office. Cosgrove Construction. Everybody knew it. Shut it down to run for office. And he's running against a guy who retired, and in his retirement has nothing else to do and wants to run for office. He shut his business down at Cosgrove Construction on Route 1, therefore had a vacant building that his grandfather left him when his grandfather passed away a few years ago. So he rented the building. One of the contractors happens to work for the town as well. Nothing wrong with that. Yet all you see now from Democrats, I want to pull up this flyer. Branford's current Republican leadership is not looking out for local families. Town spending, debt, and taxes all continue to rise, while the first selectman gives taxpayer-funded handouts to his business associates. What are you talking about? He shut down his business to become first selectman, to end the Tabor lawsuits, to end the public works push at Tabor, to get a senior center done, to get Walsh Intermediate School done, to get project after project done while maintaining a positive mill rate, while maintaining a positive bond rating from outside agencies. That's what he did. He had a vacant building that he inherited from his grandfather who passed away. By the way, Dan Cosgrove, who was legendary in Branford. And instead of selling the property and let it be developed, he took tenants in. By the way, he's a part owner of the building. The family owns the building. That's all he did. That's it. Taxpayer-funded handouts to his business associates. What planet are you from? That town contractor's done grass for the last 15 years in the town. But these are the mailers that are being sent out. The lies, the purposeful trying to deceive Branford residents. Brockett doesn't hold a candle to Cosgrove. So we all know that, like, there's nobody that's saying, hey, listen, I've looked at the qualifications of these candidates, I'm voting for Brockett. Nobody is. You can't do it. If you were hiring anybody to run the town, you would not accept Brockett's resume. Doesn't make sense. So let's get beyond that. This kid is running, getting favors from people who want his attention on a state level. That's where the money's coming from, and that's why you're not getting articles about a tax collector who broke serious, serious laws. That's not me saying it. Independent auditors and the Office of Policy and Management at the state saying it. And they won't write the article because of Coughlin. This is what corruption in politics is. This is the game. And they're doing this against a guy who said, I'm not playing the game. I'm not sending negative mailers. This isn't pay to play, that you donate to us and you get something in return. And so I wrote at one point that the soul of Branford's at risk here. The soul of Branford is at risk here. Do we become New Haven? Or do we stay what we are now? An amazing town. A town I'm incredibly proud to live in. But let's talk about some of these races that are happening. First off is the first selectman race. Obviously, if you're in your right mind, you're voting for Cosgrove. from a qualification standpoint. But it's just because based on all of the amazing things that have happened in town. If you remember 8 years ago, and I understand Kevin Coughlin doesn't. I understand Brockett does it because he wasn't involved at all. I understand most of the people running on the Democratic ticket have no idea what was happening and the issues that were in town when Cosgrove was elected. They don't understand the ridiculous lawsuits, $20 million that DeRoss and Kurt Schwanfelder were behind, that taxpayers had to pay. They've forgotten about that, or they weren't around for that. That Cosgrove ended. They've forgotten how residents were coming out petitioning against DeRoss, who was pushing to put a public works garage in a residential neighborhood on Tabor. They weren't around for that. Cosgrove ended that. They've forgotten how roomfuls of seniors who were angry that over and over again the Democrats couldn't get a senior center passed. And how Cosgrove walked in, went through a process, and we have a new senior center for seniors. A community house that was decrepit and falling apart. We have a new community house. Blackstone Library, a project I don't even like, but many people want it. That's done. An animal shelter moving forward. All while keeping the mill rate lower than every single town that neighbors us. That's not an accident. When he got into office, it's interesting. One of the first things he put out was that he was going to leave Joe Mooney as the chairman of the Board of Finance, who's a Democrat. There were 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats, and if there was going to be any switch, the deciding vote on that would have come down to Jamie Cosgrove. So as a new Republican in office, he could have said, we're going to put Kurt Schwanfelder or Charlie Shelton as the chair, likely got the Republican votes, and then he would have been the tiebreaker. He didn't do that. When he took office, he kept one of the Democrats, who was a Democratic attorney, who was handling tax appeals, in place. The guy didn't give a damn if you were Democratic or Republican. If you did a good job, he kept you. Very few first selectmen do that. They usually clean house and get all those who supported them politically in office. That's what they do. Cosgrove didn't do it. It's not the game he was going to play. And so you do have the soul of the town at risk right now. Do you stick with the guy who made us the ethical town moving forward and really the jewel of the shoreline, the lowest taxes, property values escalating, or do you go to the guy who had no problem lying, no problem taking donated money from unions, from residents, and using it to send out mailers, lying and misleading the public? Because if we go back to that same mailer, I'm going to read it. Brantford's GOP's first selectman, Jamie Cosgrove, has a business relationship with a town contractor who will receive $120,000 in taxpayer funds over the next 3 years. Okay, so first of all, it's not $120,000, but even if it was, that's $40,000 a year to cut grass. They have 5 different contracts with the town. The business relationship is their landlord. He doesn't make money from the contracts. He's their landlord. He owns the company with him and his brothers and sisters of the building, and he's a landlord. That's all he is. There's no business relationship. That's nonsensical. Under the current leadership, taxes have risen 12%, town spending has gone up 18%, and our debt has increased 28%, while empty storefronts go undeveloped and Brantford's grand list has stagnated. So let's talk about this for a second. Taxes risen 12% over 8 years. Now 12% is compounded, so it's basically like 1.4% a year. That's spectacular. Spectacular. No town can match that. That's amazing. Town spending went up by 18%. Yeah, 2% a year. While adding a senior center, Blackstone Library, animal shelter, community house, new firehouse in Indian Neck, and solar, all the other projects that have been added. Yes, it went up a little bit. Still lower than all of our neighboring towns. Our debt has increased by 28%. Okay, answer this. What project didn't you want? If you're going to complain about debt, let us know, Mr. Brockett. And let's be honest, Kevin Coughlin, because you're running the show. Let us know what project you don't want. You have to say this. What project, what are you against? Are you against the community house? You against the senior center? You could go to the seniors and let them know. You against the animal shelter? You against the Blackstone Library project? Because you stood up and talked for all these projects. Now you're complaining that we got to pay for them. It's amazing to me. More nonsense from your idiotic, dishonest campaign. The current leadership has continually wasted taxpayer funds, as two recent town building projects are nearly $6 million over their initial budgets. On what planet? There's a $29,000 surplus on the Senior Center Community House project. The animal shelter just got started. You don't know what you're talking about. You literally have no problem lying. And if you're questioning that, call up Jim Finch at the Board of Finance and ask him what the current status of the overages or underages of the community house is. Go ahead. Ask him. Don't trust me. Ask him. It's hard because if you are Mrs. Cosgrove or the two kids in the school system getting mailer after mailer after mailer, it gets hard to handle this crap. It's just completely dishonest from a kid who doesn't care running their campaign. And I haven't seen Brockett speak up against it. I haven't seen Dunbar speak up against it. I haven't seen people I've endorsed. I haven't seen Robin Comey speak up against the lie. She knows it's bullshit. I haven't seen her speak one word. I haven't seen Democrats on the RTM get up and speak one word that was false. I've seen some Democrats in town who are far left Democrats write letters to the editor for Jamie. They had courage to tell the truth and what his record is. But all you elected people who keep your mouth shut because you think it helps you, if you stand by thinking lying helps you and slandering someone else helps you and say nothing, you're a scumbag. You are the problem. And I'll have no problem saying, Robin, either speak up or you're the problem. RTM members, either speak up or you're the problem. You know these are lies. You know these are false. I have a track record on this site defending Robin Comey when people lie against her, defending Christine Cohen when people lie against her, defending Sean Scanlon when people lie against her. I'll defend any party when people lie about them. It's time for you to stand up too. It's time for you to show us you have ethics or morals or whatever you like to pretend you have when you keep your mouth shut because a Democrat's there. Why? Because Robin Comey, next year you want those Democrats to work for you too. Just like the unions want a favor. And they donate to that campaign. It's ridiculous. And I don't subscribe to this belief that what happens in politics doesn't matter. Oh, it's politics. It's just part of politics. So, no, if you're unethical, you're unethical. If you're dishonest, you're dishonest. There happens to be a guy on the ballot who isn't unethical and isn't dishonest and has never attacked an opponent in 5 years running, ever. Now, he and his wife and his family and his child have to deal with, and his children have to deal with mailer after mailer after mailer, slandering their father, slandering their husband, because good people stand by and do nothing. I've defended you when you were called for it. When you were lied about, I defended you. It's time for Democrats to stand up and say, no, I'm not letting this happen in my town. Here's a little secret. It'll help you more in the long run. More people will vote for you in the long run if you do that. Let's move on to the tax collector. The party knew what was happening in the tax office. We know that now because the Office of Policy and Management sent a letter on May 7th to the tax collector. On May 7th, 6, 7, 8 months ago, about the wrongdoing that was taking place. Then an independent audit came in and analyzed the tax office and said serious problems were happening in the tax office. And now a further investigation is going on. So instead of removing Gil Brooks from that seat as a candidate, they ran her again and they posted her signs all over town. Now, that's fine. And so we saw a letter to the editor of the Sound, I think, this week, from Roberta Gilbrook's parents. Now, he is a legendary person in town. He was a former police chief. But they reference the former tax collector, what's her name? Joanne Cleary. And Joanne Cleary, 4 years ago, did, on a mailer, endorse Roberta Gilbrooks. Now, if you'd like to do this with me, you can do it and go to Robin Parado for Tax Collector on Facebook. Go to his page and scroll down. And as you scroll down, there are comments. I have a screenshot of this and I can't find it right now. At some point I'll find it. But from Joanne Cleary. And I'm going to look at it. So you can go to, if you're here, you can go to my personal page, Steve Mazzacane, who most of you know, and scroll down the feeds. And I posted this probably a week or two ago. And I want to read directly from what Joanne Cleary posted publicly. I want to make sure I get it word for word so there's no questions, no accusations, no whatever. Okay. Here's the post. Joanne Cleary. Bob. Wishing you success in your run for tax collector. That office needs you desperately and you would be superb at getting it straightened out. Best of luck. From Democratic tax collector Joanne Cleary, who was there for years. Ever since I started covering news, she was in office. You have the Office of Policy and Management sending her letters on serious issues in her department. You have an independent audit raising concerns of serious issues in her department. You have the head of the Board of Finance, Joe Mooney, a Democrat, running a investigation into her department. And you have the former Democratic tax collector saying that office desperately needs you. It would be superb at getting it straightened out. To her opponent. What else needs to be said? What else? I like her. She's nice. That's great. We'll take competence. Because when the police are walking her out of the tax collector's office, it's going to be a massive embarrassment to the town. The allegations are no joke. I'll take boring Bob Imperato, who can competently handle the department and make sure our taxes are managed properly and collected properly on time, not altering payments or envelopes over the crap we're seeing now from that department. Let's go to the treasurer. Kurt Schwanfelder, who's apparently the mastermind before this attack on Cosgrove about conflict of interest in town contractors. No truth to it whatsoever. And he knows there's no truth to it whatsoever because he said to the Register, I looked into this a year ago, and he's been still signing off on every single payment. Clearly, there's no wrongdoing. But Schwanfelder is the guy with DeRoss who was part of that Tabor disaster, $18 to $20 million out the window based on illegally taking property from a developer. He's a joke. It doesn't make any sense. And Deb Conklin is fine on the other side of the Republican ticket, gets the job done, lifelong career in insurance, knows her stuff. You have inner city politics with Coughlin and Schwanfelder and this group with track records that are terrible versus people who have phenomenal track records and none of that garbage. And then you get to town clerk. And I've said this before, I have nothing negative to say about either one of these candidates, except this. When you're hired into a job and that person trains you, makes sure you're educated, gets you certified, makes sure you have a guaranteed job, makes sure you're paid every week, gives you an opportunity, do you then go run against her? Legal? Sure. Just kind of nasty? Yeah. Really nasty. And so I'm voting for Lisa for one very simple reason. One, it's screwed up what her opponent's doing. But two, you vote for Lisa and two people that depend on a job keep their job. Period. If you vote for the Democrat, and I just, her name escapes me right now. I don't mean to be forgetting her name. I'll mention it if it comes back to me. One person, Lisa, loses her job and the other one keeps her job. That makes no sense to me. You know, part of what makes sense is when you find somebody in office who's doing a good job, you leave them there. It's hard to find, as we're finding out in the tax collection office. You could elect somebody who's nice and happy and all that kind of stuff. Doesn't mean they're qualified for the job. Is Lisa serious about her job? Yeah. Has some people not liked that she was on top of her stuff and hard about getting stuff the proper way? Yeah, but now we see what being nice and incompetent is happening in the tax collector's office. I'll take competent. I'll take someone who gets the job done and follows all the many laws and rules that are required in those positions. And I'm not going to sit here and say that somebody's done their job should lose it because of an R or a D after their name. It doesn't mean I'm not voting for any Democrats on this ticket. And so I am going to talk about the Board of Ed for a second. There were 3 people in our interviews that jumped out at me as very, very strong. And it's unfortunate that 2 of those people happen to be running directly against each other. Now, on the Board of Ed, traditionally, people don't always end up filling out their full 4 or 6 year terms. People fall off. So it would be my hope that should that happen this year, the other person is put into that seat, because in that ticket, there's 3 members that really jumped out at me. I'll give you the names of those 3 members: Tim Rainer, Christy Cantu, and Megan DeLucia. Megan and Tim primarily because they bring business experience to the board. If you are a parent who is looking to set goals and to see those goals come to fruition, we need people who are not primarily in academics. Academia has this forever process to get stuff done, where it's got to be peer reviewed 1,000 times and it's delayed and everybody has an opinion. But business people tend to say, listen, let's set some goals and some benchmarks to hit those goals and let's move forward. And both of those in Tim Rainer and in Megan DeLucia showed that to me. However, Cosgrove deserves to stay in office because he's done a great job and he's an honest guy. He's done the things that needed to get done. There are changes needed on the Board of Education. Over the last whatever time frame that Christy Cantu has been on the Board of Education, she has been one of the few members who will consistently speak up when she needs to speak up. And I will tell you that I know Board of Ed members who will privately give you a lot. I'm going to speak up. I'm going to say this. We need to fight against this. I don't like Hamlet. I don't like whatever it is. But Christy has consistently spoken up. So this is by far the hardest race on this ticket. When you have qualities in Megan DeLucia that you want, I want those qualities on the Board of Education. But I also have somebody who has stepped up and spoken up and said positive things and talked about change when she needed to, when it wasn't always easy to do, and when other members didn't always join her. I have a lot of respect for that. That said, I have to be consistent. If I'm talking about Jamie keeping his job because he's done a good job, if I'm talking about Lisa Arpin keeping his job because he's done a good job, if I'm talking about the RTM staying Republican because they've done a good job working with Jamie, then also I have to say that Christy Cantu has done a good job, and I will be voting for Christy Cantu on the Board of Education. One of probably 2 or 3 at most Democrats I'll be voting for this year. I can't ask somebody to stand up and have a voice, watch them do it, and then not stand back there. I can't do that. I can't stand up and say, all right, Christy, you got to be bold, and watch her be bold and watch her respond and watch her stand up to people on that board for this last year or so. And then when she comes up for re-election and we need those qualities, then not support her. That said, Megan DeLucia is a spectacular addition to the Board of Ed. My hope is that if anybody does drop off the Board of Ed, and usually someone does, the first person to get on there is Megan DeLucia. Because I was incredibly impressed with her interview here. Her business acumen, the way she approaches issues, just made sense. The other one's Tim Rainer, and we'll get to that seat later on. I'll talk about the rest. So, when it comes to Peter Burdon, I kind of feel the same way. He's spoken up too. Tim Rainer's spoken up too. And I'm going to tell you something interesting about the Board of Ed candidates. There seems to be, across party lines, a kind of kinship with the incumbents, with Burdon, Tim Rainer, and Cantu. There seems to be, hey, let's work together. Let's get this stuff done. So on my ballot, in that first box, it's 3 of 4. very likely I'll have both Republicans, only because they're incumbent and Christie Cantu, the same reason. These are people who have been speaking up. I can't say we need people who are going to speak up and talk about change and talk about in a reasonable way. I'm not yell and scream like idiots, but in a reasonable way and without being political. Because that's going to be one of my concerns with one of the candidates who's on the ballot is how political are they? We can't watch them do those things for the last year, 6 months, 2 years, whatever it is, be the voices of the people on that board, and then when they come up for election, not be behind them. So it's 2 of 4. I have to stand by the principles that I put out. If I have 2 people that have been speaking up, and Tim Rainer and Verdun, and they have, I can't then suddenly not vote for them and not support them when they come up for re-election. The same way, if I have somebody who's done a great job running the town in Jamie Cosgrove, who's gotten all the things that are important to me done, if you're a Democrat, all the things that are important to Democrats done on the environment, on seniors, on schools, and then you say, I'm not going to vote for them. So before I get to the rest of the tickets, on the Board of Ed, the incumbents are who I will be supporting, those 3 incumbents. There's another box on the bottom as well. Now, that doesn't mean Brett or Maria aren't great additions, but I can't have one standard and then not have another. And your reason for voting may be different than mine. Brett, a little more political than I may be comfortable with, certainly brings energy, and I like that in his household. He has background from 3 or 4 different school districts, a positive addition. Marie, I know well. I know some people were critical of her because she was on before. I don't think that will be a detriment in any way, shape, or form. I think her experience dealing with in her family, the students that had learning issues, other issues, going through the school system gives her a level of empathy and understanding of what it's like to go through those things in Brantford, although Christie brings some of those things as well. So both of those candidates bring a lot of qualities, if those qualities are what matters to you. From my standpoint, I can't take somebody who was doing a good job, was speaking up when they should, and then say, no, I'm not going to support you. So based on what's important to me, I will endorse Peter Verdun, Tim Rainer, and Christie Cantu for that seat. I don't have the ballot in front of me, so I'll look at the rest of it tomorrow. We'll talk about that at that time. So my ticket isn't completely Republican, but yes, the top of the ticket and the top of those top 5 positions, 6 positions, voting for Jamie, voting for Angie Higgins, just have done a great job. There's no way you can take, if you're a Democrat and you care about the environment, seniors, education, it's Cosgrove. Brockett has no record on this stuff, none. If you care about clean elections, it's Cosgrove. If you care about honesty and integrity and not slandering other people in your own town, it's Cosgrove. It just is. Now, if you want to give into the Wayne Cook bullshit, screaming at meetings, and that group in Indian Neck who want to scream and yell out homophobic things and yell at awful things and send disgusting emails, Brockett's gone and catered to that group. And I want nothing to do with that group. When I said this to Ray Dunbar, I said, you got some of the craziest people on your supporting you. He goes, yeah, we try to appeal to everybody. Wrong answer. Especially against a guy who doesn't go after crazy and the people yelling like madmen at meetings, people insulting and slandering other people. And I'll take the party that didn't go get a New Haven political operative who works at the state to run their campaign. I'll take the ones who stuck with Brantford people who know Brantford issues all along the way. So I'm voting for Cosgrove, Angie Higgins, voting for Lisa Arpin. And by the way, both candidates keep their job if you vote for Lisa Arpin in that seat. Voting for Deb Conklin because Schwanfelder is just Schwanfelder. Bob Imperato because we need to fix that. I agree with Joanne Cleary. Needs to be fixed. What's the 4th one? I don't remember what it was. But that's what I'm doing. And then I get to the Board of Ed, those top seats, the incumbents is who I'll go for because they've shown us a record already of speaking up, stepping up when they've been asked to. And I think that's helpful. Okay, that's it for today. I'll talk about the rest of the Board of Ed tomorrow. Some of the RTM stuff. I'm not in all the districts. Obviously, I'm only in one district in the 5th. There's some. I'll go through the districts and talk about if I would change my vote in any of those for Democrats or Republicans and go over those. But if you're voting for Jamie and you realize the record he's had and the things he's done in this town, then you also want to make sure he has people that support that. I can't tell you how bad Brocket's been. He's been an embarrassment. He gets up and gives up these speeches that are terrible. The statement they made about the police, if that didn't say, get the hell out of here, I don't know what will. But the town had people in the dark during that shooting. No, the police handled that, not the first selectman. The police. And he doubled down on that on the debate. His words to Cosgrove, I kid you not, was, I don't begrudge you being away if you were on vacation, but you should have put somebody in charge. Like, that's how you think town works? That, hey, listen, if there's a shooting, hey, handle this for me? No, there's very specific protocols in training that police and fire and town people go through. You should have just left somebody in charge? What planet is this guy on? And the people supporting him aren't supporting Brockett. The money's coming from people who want something from Coughlin. Attorneys who might want to be judges, and Coughlin's somebody up in Hartford who will likely move up the ranks. Unions that want contracts with the state or want to make sure laws are supportive of unions at the state level. Those are the people giving to that campaign. That's New Haven style politics. Which one wins out is up to you. Which one you want Brantford to be is up to you. But I don't want a kid from New Haven working for the Senate Democrats running Brantford when you have Cosgrove, who has successfully done all of these things for the town. And to anybody that remembers what it was like before he was in office, you know all the problems that existed. If you're a Democrat like I am and you stand for something, if you're in that vein of socially liberal, fiscally conservative, let's not blow money on nonsense, but we also don't care who you sleep with, protect abortion rights, all that stuff. If you're in that vein, you're a Cosgrove voter. Neil, I haven't got to Neil. He's unfortunately he has an illness in his family. That's why I'm holding off on talking about that section, the 6-year, 4-year, and then 2-year, whatever it is. I'm holding off on talking about that because he hasn't gotten an opportunity to come on yet. He may not. I know he had some illness in his family. I ran into him a couple of days ago. Seems like a great guy, but I don't want to say anything without having knowing for sure we're not going to be able to have him on. It's pretty late in the game. But we'll talk about that in more detail maybe tomorrow or Monday. Okay, that's it for today. If there are questions, send them in. I know a lot of people are sending in comments and questions. There's just a lot of crap happening. You know, Democrats are pouring their sign. They're all over places. They don't belong. You know, first of all, you don't have the right to put your signs on public property. So all those little triangles around streets and those little areas that you think no one cares about, and they're pouring their signs up. They don't belong there. If you're a resident, you can call Public Works and ask for those to be removed. The Democrats have done this nonstop. I guess we have some new people who don't care, but you don't have a right to do that. But they're pushing. I'm getting mailers every single day, and they're just hate mail about a guy who is shut down his business to fix the problems in Brantford 8 years ago. Shut it down. And now he gets hate mail for it. That's not the Democratic Party I signed up for. And I'm not leaving. I'm voting Cosgrove. Guys, have a great night. I will see you tomorrow at 4.